Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. The new Narset card for Ikoria has finally been spoiled. I've been waiting for this one to show up because we already knew Narset was going to be the third planeswalker in Ikoria. Now, did you know that Narset's not actually in the Ikoria novel at all? I picked up the novel yesterday and read the entire thing, and Narset's not in it. We're gonna get into my theory as to what happened, because something definitely happened with the story here. So we'll get into that after we take the time to review the actual spoiler of Narset. So let's start out with that. We've got Narset of the Ancient Way. Now, casting cost is 1 white, 1 red, 1 blue, and 1 for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. +1, you gain 2 life, add a blue or red or a white mana. Spend this mana only to cast a non-creature spell. Already that feels a little bit weird. I'll come back to that though. -2, draw a card. You may discard a card. When you discard a non-land card this way, Narset of the Ancient Way deals damage equal to that card's converted mana cost to target creature or planeswalker. And -6, you get an emblem with whenever you cast a non-creature spell. This emblem deals 2 damage to any target. So it is a little bit weird in a heavily creature-focused like Lair of the Behemoth Giganto creature land to have multiple abilities that trigger on non-creature spells. That feels kind of divergent, right? I mean, obviously that's not a big problem, but it is kind of weird numerically. Now, the first ability on Narset feels kind of weak and underwhelming. You gain 2 life and a mana, but there's the restriction of you can only use it for non-creature spells. The second ability is pretty solid though, honestly. The fact that you get to draw a card, then discard a card on top of the damage that this can do to wipe out a creature or a planeswalker is a decent way for Narset to protect herself. Honestly, with the 4 loyalty on this card, it feels like most likely you're just going to end up using the second ability multiple times. You know what I mean? The plus ability is nice in terms of building loyalty towards the ultimate. And the ultimate is okay, but it doesn't feel like an insane, overwhelming ultimate where every time you cast a spell, you're destroying a permanent or whatever. It just adds a little bit onto non-creature spells. Essentially what you get to do is add a shock onto non-creature spells. So for 4 mana, this doesn't feel too unbalanced. I mean, your opponent has 2 turns to answer if you like +1 it up to get it to 6 to do the ultimate. So they've got a couple of turns to answer it, and the ultimate isn't an oppressive game-breaking ultimate. It's just a nice thing to have. Now, when we turn to the artwork, probably one of the first things you're going to notice is that Narset really, really wants to go back to being her War of the Spark version, because in the artwork here, you can see it looks like she's literally trying to high kick the red and white mana symbols straight off the card. She's like, no, I want to be Narset of the blue way, bro. So we actually get a larger variation of the artwork, which looks pretty cool. She's doing this crazy like flying leap kick near these gigantic stone pillars that are raising up into the sky. You have all these birds flying around. There's a part of me that wonders if this is repurposed artwork, because I don't think that the crystals that appear in the lands of Ikoria actually look like they do in the background. This kind of doesn't give me an Ikoria vibe. Actually, the weird kind of crystally stuff in the rock formations, either it's sloppily done or it's edited in afterwards, because it kind of stands out and looks a little bit weird. It's not as distinctive or as clear as the rest of the artwork. So that may have been a digital alter afterwards. I could be completely wrong though. I could be 100% just looking at it that way because Narset's not in the story, so my brain feels like it's more shoved in. There's a bunch of weird stuff going on between the story of Ikoria, the actual novel, and the cards. Like with Throne of Eldraine, they were pretty much almost in lockstep for most parts of it. The only major divergence that I noticed in Throne of Eldraine was when Garruk lost his curse, they clearly used a completely different artwork they had commissioned for Garruk losing his curse in a different way. That was very obvious. But with this set, we're seeing a much bigger difference. Anyways, the artwork on this is serviceable. It's interesting to note that Narset is depicted in a way where she looks much older than previous versions we've seen of Narset. Now, I don't know if this is actually correct, like if this is how Narset should actually look, because Narset is actually, like, she was in a leadership position, and I think she's been around for a while. So I think depicting her as old may actually be the more appropriate choice here, but it does feel a little bit jarring when you're used to seeing the regular version of Narset. Now, they do have an alternate art version of this Narset that will be for the collector's edition, and most likely, I think they're probably going to do it the same way they did with the previous sets, where these alternate art versions are also available in regular booster packs. But you can see clearly it's the exact same card. She's, like, ability-wise, she's kicking in the opposite direction. You can see that there are the Ikoria crystals that are there in the background there. So this feels more like it's set on Ikoria. At least there's something to nod to Ikoria. Interestingly enough, her eyes seem to be glowing the same color as the crystals. So it makes you wonder, is she somehow able to connect with the crystals? And that could have tied into the Ikoria storyline if she was still a part of the storyline. Honestly, I've got to say, this alternate artwork doesn't feel that fantastic. And another weird thing about Narset is every single version of Narset that we're looking at is wearing a different outfit. So we looked at the one Narset, she was dressed in a particular way. We look at this Narset, she's dressed in a different way with different colors. And she's actually depicted in another card in the set too, and that's Channeled Force, which we talked about in a previous spoiler video, but if you haven't seen that video, Channeled Force is 1 red, 1 blue, and 2. It's an instant. As an additional cost to cast a spell, discard X cards. Target player draws X cards. Channeled Force deals X damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. So it ties into the same ability mechanically as the planeswalker, where it's like, okay, discard cards and you can do damage to targets, and there's also card drawing involved. So it feels tight in terms of design that way. Now, when you look at the artwork, you can see, again, she's wearing a different outfit. She has an older looking face, and she's doing, honestly, it looks like what she's doing here really is more almost like countering a spell. I don't know if this is repurposed artwork. I really don't know what's going on with Narset in Ikoria. The Ikoria story is very weird in that there's some inconsistencies that don't make sense. So if you haven't read the story and you don't want story spoilers, you're gonna wanna stop now, because in about 3 seconds, I'm gonna dive in to some story spoiler action, all right, and some big pieces of the story. So when we look at artwork on other cards like the Luca Planeswalker that was spoiled, it shows him as a bonder with this gigantic flying like saber-toothed tiger beast, right? But here's the thing, Luca never really teams up and becomes friends with that beast. They play it like that happens that way in the cards, but that cat actually gets destroyed. It gets executed by the general before Luca ever even becomes a planeswalker. So we have this weird disconnect with the artwork. There's a bunch of stuff that's just like shown in cards that doesn't really match the story we were given. So something has happened to the story, and it's made Narset disappear. Narset only exists in one sentence in the novel, where Vivian basically goes, I wish Narset was here. And then in the Planeswalker's Guide to Ikoria that they listed on Wizards' website, it has Narset mentioned by Vivian again. But that's it. Narset's only mentioned by Vivian twice, and it's almost acting like they have some kind of friendship or whatever. But the thing is, we never saw that in the War of the Spark happening. It's not like Vivian and Narset became friends. So it's just a confusing scenario where why does Vivian want Narset here specifically? And the answer is because they had originally included Narset in the story. I think that there were heavy rewrites of the Ikoria story, and I think it has to do with the War of the Spark books and the Theros, the entire fallout that we have seen with the lore. So if you're not 100% what I'm talking about there, just to give you really rough back information, what happened is Wizards of the Coast hired someone who can be a competent writer to write the War of the Spark books. However, they also tied his hands and had all kinds of requirements as to what he had to do for the books. And as a result, they ended up as a garbled mess because, first of all, he wasn't given enough creative freedom. He had a ton of restrictions on him, and Wizards didn't even bother to proofread the books. They didn't. That's why on the second book at the very beginning, Nissa Ravain's name is spelled wrong. Like, they're just a massive joke. They made Wizards a laughingstock. I'm sure there was a ton of returns of the novels, and they ran into a big problem in the realm of representation. And that's actually what I think reconfigured the Ikoria book. So, if you don't know what I mean, for the longest time, they were doing a build-up where Chandra and Nissa were creating a romantic entanglement, right? They were right into each other, and everyone was like, you know, it's the will they, won't they, when are they going to get together kind of scenario. The stuff that people enjoy in stories. That kind of romance is A-okay, right? So they build this all up, and then Wizards decides, and this is, I mean, we can't prove it, but this is most likely due to trying to sell the books in markets where lady on lady love is forbidden love, you know what I mean? So there's certain markets in the world, I'm sure you guys know who I'm talking about, that don't take kindly to that sort of thing. So Wizards wanted to walk it back and go, you know what, actually, they're not going to get together. Instead, we're going to have Chandra just be attracted to dudes hardcore. So they went with that, and there was a huge uproar from the Representation Matters group of people. And in all honesty, in this scenario, it's completely understandable why they would get riled up, because Wizards has been building this up for a long time, and by yanking it back, it's almost like them stating, we don't actually care about representation, we only care about making money. And that's the truth of Wizards. So that's what you need to understand. They only do these representation maneuvers because they think it will make them money. And that's why a lot of it ends up hollow as well. And that's how we end up with Narset possibly not being an Ikoria. Because after we ended up with the huge outcry over what happened in the War of Spark novels, Wizards literally hid. They torpedoed their own Theros novel. We didn't get to see the Theros novel at all. We got this kind of summaried part, right? Where it's just like, okay, here's what happened in like 16 paragraphs. It was jank, but Wizards apparently is terrified to show their customer base the Theros book. But they have plenty of time to go ahead and reconfigure the Ikoria book because it's a digital book, right? It's not a physical release, it's a digital book, and they can make changes on the fly. Now, this digital book is 159 pages. The Theros book was 220 something, and most magic novels tend to be longer. And the way that the novel reads, it feels unfinished. I finished reading the novel, and I still had a bunch of questions that should have been answered by the novel. So my brain went, wait, something's missing here. A whole bunch of stuff is missing here. And one of the main things missing is Narset. Where is she, right? Like, when they do stories including Planeswalkers, look at Throne of Eldraine. The storyline included the Royal Scions, so the Kendrith twins. It included Oko and Garruk, and they all had parts to play in the story. They were all there. There was no, hey, I wish Garruk was here, and that was the only mention. When they have Planeswalkers in a set, they show up in the stories. We saw it even when they trimmed down the Theros story and just gave us the whole, all right, you know, Calix wanted to beat up Elspeth, so he chased her out into the ether kind of thing. But we still got them at least like they were doing something in the story. Narset has done nothing in the story, and I think what happened is, what you need to understand for this is Narset is also a creation of representation. You might not be aware of this, but Narset is actually coded to be autistic. This has been confirmed by Wizards of the Coast. So, now, again, obviously this is just like an out there kind of theory, but I think what might have happened is Wizards may have leaned too hard into the, like, make sure that Narset really comes across as autistic or something like that, to the point where Wizards had to go, oh God, no. Okay, hold on. We read this. We can't do this. We have to cut this out. Get the author on the phone. We got to redo the story. We got to change things. There's just too much of a difference between the cards and the absence of Narset altogether for me to think that this is the story we were originally meant to get. Now, can I say it's for certain because of Narset and them trying to go a particular route that was ill-advised and didn't turn out well for them? No, I can't prove it. But I do feel that there's a strong possibility that that may be why Narset got iced from the story. Because they tried to go a particular way with it, realized that the days of them like blindly pushing the representation concept are coming to a close, which in some ways is unfortunate. I mean, the blindly pushing it part is unfortunate. They shouldn't do that. Making people feel included is a nice thing to do. I don't fault people who try and do it, but it needs to feel natural for the story, right? That's really what it comes down to, is everything needs to be in service to the story rather than vice versa. Because I know sometimes when you talk about these kind of things, people will come out and yell at you and be like, you're blah, 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 you're blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, feel free, go ahead and yell on blah, blah, blah in the comments. At the end of the day, you're going to do it anyways. But it doesn't mean that what you're saying is true. So thanks for coming by. Let me know about your theories. I want to know why you think that there is literally no Narset in the story. That part's not up for debate. I've read the entire novel. There is no Narset. She is AWOL 100%. Want to give a big shout out to my patrons and channel members. Thank you very much for supporting my channel. It means a lot to me. Look at your lovely names rolling on the screen. Everyone else, thanks for coming by, and I will see all of you people very soon.